They were all dead. Every last one of them, 37 head of Angus cattle, sprawled out across my pasture like toppled statues, glassy-eyed and unmoving. Some were foaming at the mouth, others had collapsed mid-stride as if their legs had simply given up. I stood at the edge of my land in yesterday's boots, hands trembling around a mug of now-cold coffee, staring into a quiet field where the only sound was the buzz of flies circling tragedy. I knew immediately what had happened. And worse, I knew who had done it. Her name was Carolyn Pickens, 58 years old, beehive hairdo dyed the color of copper pennies, a fake smile tighter than a noose, and the kind of floral-printed blouses that screamed, "I pretend to be kind." President of the Whispering Cedars Homeowners Association, a title she wielded like a sword blessed by God and notarized by Satan himself. She had no business stepping foot on my land. But she did, again and again, and this time she went too far. She thought it was just seed. "To help your pasture blend better with the rest of the neighborhood," she had said last week, with a condescending smile and 2 HOA board members in tow. "We're standardizing aesthetics for environmental consistency. You'll thank us later, Clyde." I had refused, politely at first. She did it anyway. And that's the thing about Carolyn. She didn't believe rules applied to her, just the rest of us. Whispering Cedars looked like paradise on paper. Wide roads lined with sugar maples, glossy mailboxes spaced like soldiers, pastel homes trimmed to HOA-approved perfection. But underneath the manicured lawns was a powder keg of silent resentment, ready to blow. It started with a letter. A printed notice slid into my mailbox 2 days after I moved in. Grass height exceeds HOA standards by 0.75 inches. Immediate correction required. Carolyn's signature was stamped at the bottom with unnecessary flair, curly loops and all. I chuckled, trimmed the lawn, and thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Then came the citations. My mailbox, non-regulation black, must be Whispering Cedars bronze. My truck exceeds community size limits by 2 inches, must be stored out of sight. Even my wind chimes, noise violation, melody not in HOA-approved tuning. It was ridiculous. I tried to play along, keep the peace. After all, I didn't. Just live here. I worked for the state. Livestock Commissioner of Jefferson County. I oversaw the safety and regulation of every farm animal within 300 miles. My days were filled with disease testing, compliance reports, emergency calls, and late-night inspections. Carolyn didn't know that. She just saw another stubborn man standing between her and her fantasy of suburban dominion. By week 3, she had filed a formal complaint that my cattle created an olfactory nuisance inconsistent with Whispering Cedars' intended ambience. Ambience, that was the word she used. Like cows grazing peacefully in a field were disrupting her damn yoga playlist. I invited her over for a calm discussion. She brought a clipboard. "It's nothing personal, Clyde," she said, scribbling notes. "But order requires vision. Some people aren't cut out for organized living. Perhaps you'd be happier in less refined environments." I asked her to leave. She didn't like that. That's when the fines started. Weekly, then daily, fabricated violations, unauthorized fencing, improper irrigation, fence post color clashing with HOA pallet. She began showing up during inspections, looming like a crow on a power line. Neighbors stopped waving. A few crossed the street when I passed. Carolyn had infected the entire block with quiet paranoia. She had created a kingdom where fear looked like order and silence looked like agreement. But I kept my head down until last night. I had seen the tracks. Thin tire treads curving up my gravel drive, disappearing into the pasture's edge. Something had been scattered, seed, light, and bright green. I'd bent down, pinched it, sniffed. My gut turned cold. This wasn't standard rye. It smelled faintly chemical, like ammonium nitrate, used in certain turf blends Carolyn favored in her HOA landscaping projects. But those fertilizers, when ingested by ruminants, are deadly. 37 cattle later, she had officially crossed the line. She didn't know it yet, but what she'd done wasn't just a breach of HOA etiquette, it was agricultural bioterrorism, a felony under both state and federal law. And I wasn't just some stubborn farmer. I was the man who signed the permits, who wrote the regulations, who trained the inspectors. I was the one person in this entire state who knew exactly how to take her down. Still, I waited, let her gloat. She strutted up my driveway that morning like she was coming to claim a trophy, a mug in one hand that said HOA honey, and a phone in the other, already recording. "I warned you," she said with a smug grin as her eyes scanned the carcasses. "This community has standards. You refuse to adapt. This was inevitable." I nodded quietly. No confrontation, no threats, just calm silence. Because I wasn't here to fight her. I was here to bury her. In paperwork, in law, in her own arrogance. I walked back into my house and pulled the file I'd been building for weeks. Pictures, fines, copies of every letter, her emails, with threats thinly veiled as requests, security footage from my cameras showing her spreading the seed, and a single soil sample, already tested, verified, and cross-referenced by the state lab with her HOA turf formula. She thought this was over. She had no idea it was just beginning. And tomorrow, I was bringing it all to the hearing. Because when you declare war on a livestock commissioner, you'd better know what you're feeding. Carolyn Pickens had no clue what she'd done. Not just to me, but to herself. The hearing wasn't for another 5 days. That gave me time to let her keep digging. And oh, did she dig with gusto. The morning after my herd died, she paraded through the cul-de-sac like a victorious general. I watched from the porch as she cornered old Mr. Hemley about his unlicensed flag mount and demanded a 15-year-old remove a basketball hoop from his driveway for violating visual harmony. The rest of the neighborhood cowered like whipped dogs, eyes averted, yards immaculate, every porch festooned with regulation flower pots. They didn't just obey Carolyn, they feared her. And in that fear, she grew bolder, meaner, more unstable. On Tuesday, she issued a neighborhood-wide email decree. Effective immediately, all garden gnomes, flamingos, and lawn art deemed whimsical must be removed. Whispering Cedars represents a refined aesthetic. We do not tolerate tackiness. She signed it, of course, with her usual flair. Carolyn Pickens. President, Whispering Cedars, HOA order, elegance, integrity, order, elegance, integrity. 3. Words she wielded like weapons and violated in equal measure. I didn't respond to the email, not publicly, but I did make a few calls. I contacted the Department of Agriculture, forwarded my soil tests, and requested a formal field incident report. I reached out to a friend at the state attorney's office, quietly. No names yet, just a few hypotheticals. Then I called my old college roommate, Rick Halpern, now an investigative reporter for the Tribune, and invited him for coffee. He brought his camera. The moment he saw the cattle, his face went flat. "You sure you want to go public?" "Not yet," I said, walking him through the field. "But when I do, I want the whole damn story." He nodded, snapping photos in silence. The light hit just right. Long shadows stretched from the bodies, cast against the golden grass Carolyn tried so hard to homogenize. It looked almost artistic, tragic, real. Rick looked up from the viewfinder. "You gonna bury her with this?" "No," I said. "She'll do that herself. Because here's the thing about Carolyn. She couldn't help herself." By Thursday, she had issued me another citation. Soil disruption without HOA approval, as if the corpses of my livestock were some kind of landscaping violation. Attached was a $3,500 fine and a deadline. Clean it up by Sunday, or the HOA would take action. She didn't specify what kind, but she did include a smiley face. That night, my power went out. Not a storm. No grid failure, just my house, my lines. I lit a lantern, stepped outside, and followed the path to the breaker. The box had been tampered with, lock broken, wiring snipped. A faint smell of perfume lingered in the air, lavender and judgment. Tightened my grip on the flashlight. She was testing me. I returned inside and pulled out the manila folder again. I added a photo of the damaged breaker box, time-stamped and documented. Evidence. Every strike she took, I turned into ammunition. But the town didn't know that. Not yet. And Carolyn. She thought she was invincible. By Friday, she held a community vision meeting in the clubhouse, which was just a glorified shed with a coffee machine and a podium. She invited the entire neighborhood, not me, of course. So I went. I stood in the back while she pontificated from the front. Her voice dripped syrupy sweetness, but her eyes scanned the crowd like a prison warden. This community has thrived because of structure, because of rules. Without leadership, things fall apart. We must remain vigilant. There are forces who do not value what we've built here. Her eyes flicked to me, daring a challenge. I didn't blink. Someone raised a hand. What happened to Clyde's cattle? Carolyn smiled, too wide. Tragic, she said. But honestly, it's a wake-up call. Livestock have no place in a community like this. They pose sanitation risks, attract pests, and frankly, smell. I'll be proposing a motion to ban animal husbandry in Whispering Cedars next week. I saw the flicker then, real panic, flash across a few neighbors' faces. Edna, who kept chickens for eggs. Gerald, whose daughter raised goats for 4-H. Even little Owen, whose therapy pony lived quietly on the west lot. She wasn't just coming for me anymore. She was coming for everyone. Still, no one spoke. Fear does that to people. So I stood up and calmly asked, "Does the HOA president have the authority to amend property usage rights without a community vote?" The room shifted. Heads turned. Carolyn stiffened. Of course," she said, faltering. "Within emergency provisions." "There's no emergency." She smiled again, colder now. "Then maybe I'll make one." And that was it. Her tell, the crack. She wasn't protecting order. She was addicted to control. The meeting ended in awkward silence. No applause, just nervous glances and tight smiles. Carolyn stormed out the back, muttering into her phone. But before she left, I watched her hand a manila envelope to someone in the shadows. My stomach dropped. The man took it. Tall, square-jawed, clean-shaven. A lawyer. I recognized him. Alan Trenton, HOA counsel, and Carolyn's secret weapon. That night, I found the envelope on my porch. Inside was a cease and desist order, accusing me of community endangerment, slander, and agricultural negligence. She was trying to flip the narrative, paint me as the threat, turn the state against its own commissioner. It was brilliant. It was illegal. And it was exactly what I needed, because Alan Trenton, her new attack dog, was under investigation for 3 counts of misappropriated HOA funds in Fairview County, and I had the files to prove it. I just needed one more thing, so I called Rick again. "You still have that drone?" He laughed. "Still in the trunk. Why?" I looked across the street to Carolyn's house. Perfect hedges, manicured walkway, and a backyard hidden by a tall white privacy fence. I need eyes on her yard. Tonight. "What am I looking for?" I hesitated. Then smiled. "I don't know yet, but I bet it's going to be incredible." Rick arrived that night just after 10. The street was silent, every porch dark except Carolyn's. Her lights burned late. As usual, glowing behind drawn curtains like the inside of a pressure cooker. She was up to something. She was always up to something. Rick popped his trunk and pulled out the drone, a sleek, matte black quadcopter with a high-res camera and night vision. He flew it like it was an extension of his own hand. Within seconds, it lifted off, a whisper against the stars. We watched from the bed of my truck, eyes glued to the tablet screen. "Okay," Rick muttered, guiding the drone over Carolyn's roofline. "I'm getting visuals on the backlot now." He angled the lens down, and we both froze. "Is that—" It was. Behind Carolyn's perfect white fence, buried in the shadows, was a hidden garden. Not flowers, not vegetables. No, Carolyn Pickens had been growing sod. Industrial-grade, nitrate-rich, high-phosphate lawn turf. Acres of it rolled and stacked like a cartel warehouse for grass. The same mix that matched the soil sample from my field, the one that killed my cattle. I leaned. Closer. Get closer to those barrels. Rick zoomed in. 10 drums, all unlabeled, no hazmat markings. Just matte black steel sealed tight. Those look like fertilizer storage, I finished. Unregistered. She wasn't just enforcing the rules, she was breaking them, stockpiling illegal agricultural chemicals right in her backyard while issuing fines for mailbox colors. Rick kept the drone hovering. Want me to record a flyover? No. Hover. Let's see what she does. A light flicked on. The back door creaked open. Carolyn stepped into the yard in her robe and slippers, clutching a tablet of her own. Her beehive was still in place, silhouetted like a crown of thorns. She looked around, eyes sweeping the fence line, and then, to our shock, she walked straight to one of the barrels, popped the lid, and dipped a soil scoop inside. Rick whispered, "She's mixing it again. I need that footage. And then get that drone out of there. She sees it, this whole thing goes nuclear." He nodded and guided the drone back over the rooftops. As it descended, he exhaled. "You sure you're ready for this?" I looked toward her house. She's building her case in public. I'm building mine in silence. One of us is bluffing. One of us has receipts. Saturday morning came like a war drum. The HOA had posted a banner across the community clubhouse. Emergency meeting. Mandatory. Attendance. Carolyn wanted to strike first. By noon, the place was packed. Neighbors whispered, side-eyed one another, unsure of what this emergency even was. Carolyn stood at the front, flanked by 2 board members and her newest pet, Alan Trenton, wearing a smug navy suit and tie. She opened with a smile. "Thank you, everyone, for attending on such short notice. This community is under siege." Gasps rippled. She let it hang. "We have discovered a coordinated act of agricultural negligence that has placed our health, our property values, and our children's safety at risk." She turned to me. "I regret to inform you that Mr. Clyde Watkins has violated Whispering Cedars bylaws, local land use codes, and potentially state laws by failing to control his livestock, exposing the community to harmful pathogens, and willfully contaminating his own land in what may be a fraudulent insurance scheme." Murmurs, shuffling feet. A few heads turned toward me, stunned. Carolyn took out a folder and held it up like a relic. "This contains affidavits, citations, and legal advisories. The board has voted to initiate full expulsion proceedings." That was the moment. I stood, calmly, no raised voice. Just clarity. "Did you also include your soil sample, Carolyn?" Silence. I took a step forward. "Or the footage of you trespassing on my land? Or the black market fertilizer in your backyard? Unlabeled, unlicensed, and lethal. To livestock?" Gasps now. Real ones. Carolyn's face stiffened. "You have no authority here." I reached into my coat and pulled out a state-issued binder with a gold seal. Clyde Watkins, Livestock Commissioner, Jefferson County. I flipped to the statute. Page held it high. Under Title VI, Section 11.4, any use of prohibited agricultural chemicals resulting in the death of livestock is a Class C felony, punishable by prison time and permanent forfeiture of property used in the commission of the offense. Her smile faltered. I stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "I've got soil tests, I've got surveillance, I've got timestamps. And now, thanks to your own emergency meeting, I've got public confirmation of motive, opportunity, and intent." She snapped. "You're lying." Rick stood up from the back. "Nope, I'm press. And I've got the footage. Drones don't lie, Carolyn." The crowd erupted. Edna shouted, "You've been fining me for chickens while you're sitting on hazardous waste." Gerald bellowed, "You almost had my goats seized." Little Owen's mom shouted, "She threatened to euthanize my sons." "Pony!" Carolyn's eyes darted. Her grip on the folder trembled. She turned to Alan. "Do something!" Alan stepped forward, cleared his throat. I was told this was Carolyn. You said the fertilizer was certified." She blinked, caught. "Well, it's... Alan, handle this." Alan took a step back. "No, one word, one fracture." And just like that, her lawyer abandoned her. Carolyn looked around, at faces she once ruled, now furious and awake. "I've protected this neighborhood," she shrieked. "You're all ungrateful. You think he cares about aesthetics? He's a cow farmer." I looked at her, quiet and steady. "You're not protecting us, Carolyn. You're controlling us, and your time's up." The HOA board huddled, whispered. The president of the board, a meek man named Morris who'd never spoken above a whisper, stepped forward. He turned to Carolyn. "You're suspended. Effective immediately. Investigation pending." "No," she said. "No, you can't do this. I am Whispering Cedars." "No," he replied. "You were." Carolyn lunged for the microphone, and then her house exploded, not in flames, not in fire, but in sirens. 3 unmarked vehicles tore down the street. State ag inspectors, hazmat teams, law enforcement. They had my report. They had the drone footage. They had a warrant, and they were heading straight for her backyard. Carolyn turned pale. She staggered backward, mouth moving but silent. The crowd surged outside, drawn like moths to sirens. And me? I followed last. Calm. Purposeful. Because this was only the beginning of her fall. And what they were about to find buried beneath her shed would change everything. Carolyn Pickens was still standing frozen on the clubhouse steps when the inspectors marched past her. 3 state-issued trucks screeched to a halt outside her house. The inspectors moved fast. No hesitation, no pleasantries. Badges out, gloves on, warrant in hand. Carolyn spun on her heels. "You can't go in there. This is private property. I am the HOA president, and I do not consent." But the lead inspector, a woman named Shelby, whom I'd trained myself, barely glanced at her. "Ma'am, we're executing a warrant issued by the Department of Agriculture and the State Environmental Board. Your consent is neither required nor requested." She walked right past Carolyn, ducked beneath the fence gate, and disappeared into the backyard with 2 agents and a camera crew from Rick's paper tailing them. Carolyn stumbled forward, her voice shrill now. "This is harassment. Illegal." "Surveillance! I'll sue every single one of you!" The crowd gathered behind her. Neighbors once terrified of stepping out of line now stood shoulder to shoulder, arms crossed, whispering and waiting. Edna held her phone up, recording every second. Gerald had his arms folded, jaw set like a brick wall. And me? I stood just behind. Carolyn, close enough to speak low and calm just for her. "You know what they're going to find, don't you?" She didn't answer. Illegal storage, nitrate residue, unregistered sod production, and I leaned in slightly. The body. Her head whipped toward me. "What?" But I didn't need to repeat it, because just then, Agent Shelby's voice crackled through her radio. "We've got a containment breach under the shed. Structural collapse. Looks like bone fragments. Human. Possibly canine." Gasps rippled. Through the crowd, Carolyn swayed on her feet. Shelby stepped out from the backyard and nodded grimly. "Call in forensics and an environmental hazmat team." The color drained from Carolyn's face. Her lips trembled, searching for words that wouldn't come. The truth came out faster than she could stop it. 5 years ago, before I ever moved. In Whispering Cedars had a groundskeeper named Dennis Meyer. Quiet guy, liked dogs, maintained the common spaces. Rumor had it he'd argued with Carolyn, refused to use one of her miracle grass formulas because he said it wasn't safe for pets. Then, one day, he vanished. Carolyn told everyone he'd quit without notice. Turns out, Dennis never left. Neither did his dog. They found both under her shed, buried in chemically scorched earth, alongside several drums of misbranded fertilizer and falsified HOA receipts. Carolyn had been paying herself to maintain HOA property, submitting invoices under Dennis's name for 5 years, double-dipping, falsifying documents, concealing a death, and now, a potential homicide investigation. Carolyn was handcuffed right. There on her own manicured lawn. Even then, she screamed. "This is all his fault," she shrieked, pointing at me. "He turned you all against me. He poisoned the neighborhood. He's a cowman, for God's sake." Shelby raised a brow. "He's the livestock commissioner, ma'am. You committed a felony on his watch." Rick got the photo. Front page of the Tribune. HOA tyrant brought down by state commissioner. Carolyn's mouth open mid-scream. her robe stained with dirt, her crown of hair unraveling in the breeze like a dying wasp's nest. The investigation stretched on for months. They confirmed the nitrate-laced turf was responsible for my cattle's deaths. Carolyn was charged with unlawful pesticide use, environmental endangerment, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. The homicide investigation for Dennis Meyer remained open, but the circumstantial evidence was damning. She'd buried more than chemicals. Her board resigned en masse. The HOA was dissolved by court order, citing structural corruption and abuse of authority. I bought her house at auction. Not to live in. I bulldozed it. The land's being converted into a community greenhouse, built by the very neighbors Carolyn once harassed. Edna now runs workshops on organic composting. Gerald hosts 4-H goat meetups every third Saturday. Even little Owen's therapy pony, Buttercup, is the honorary mascot. The irony? The communities never looked better. Without Carolyn's stranglehold, people stopped worrying about flower pot symmetry and started actually talking to each other. The lawns aren't perfect, but the laughter is real. And me? I still live in the same house, overlooking the same fields. I didn't replace the cattle right away. I waited, grieved them properly. Each one had a name, a purpose. But last month, I brought in a new herd, smaller, smarter, and this time, they graze over the cleanest, safest pasture in the county. I still get letters now and then from other neighborhoods asking for help with their Carolyns, HOA tyrants, petty dictators in pressed khakis. The disease isn't isolated, but people are learning. They're standing up. All it takes is one person to remind a bully what accountability feels like. The day they hauled Carolyn off, she screamed something I'll never forget. You think this is justice? This is a circus. You're just a farmer. And you know what? She was right. I am just a farmer with a badge, a clipboard, and a memory sharp as barbed wire. I grow grass. I raise cattle. And if you mess with either, I bury you in the truth. Poetic, isn't it? Carolyn spent her life enforcing rules she didn't understand, and in the end, it was the one rule she couldn't break that got her. Don't poison the land and expect it to grow in your favor.